Ashton Jeanty is poised to be the next fantasy superstar running back, but how high should we be on him? I'm joined by the fantastic Matt Price of the LF to break down the number one running back in this year's class. Matt, we've seen some pretty hyped running backs in the last few years when you think back to Bijan and guys like that. Does Ashton Jeanty deserve to be in that tier of running back, or are we considering him a little step down from those guys?
I can see how you might have him a step down, but I think he's right there with those guys in my current dynasty rankings. Not just rookie overall. He's my running back 4 already, so it tells you he's in pretty elite company there. Just does so much well between the vision, the balance, the elusiveness, the power. I mean, there's just so much this guy does well. And you can say he doesn't necessarily have the chops because of competition of guys like Bijan and some Saquon and some of these other elite prospects that we've seen coming out. But in my opinion, he's right there with all of those guys.
Yeah, absolutely. I will always lean back on kind of my rookie model and let that lead me as such. If we're looking at guys in the last 10 years above the 96th percentile mark, Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Todd Gurley, Bijan Robinson, and as long as Ashton Jeanty gets top 20 draft capital, he'll be in that tier. So yeah, I think for me, that's the kind of the superstar prospects we've had of the last 10 years. And I think he absolutely deserves to be amongst those. As you said, the broken tackle ability is absolutely wild. My favorite stat this year, Ashton Jeanty led college football in rushing yards. Number 2 was Ashton Jeanty after contact. It's an absolutely wild stat, and it just shows his insane ability to make guys miss, run through arm tackles, and keep churning. But is there anything that kind of leaves that perhaps sort of slight niggle of doubt as to him making that transition to the next level?
I mean, not really. There are like little things you can nitpick about. He's not necessarily prototype size at 5'8.5", 5'9", whatever you want to call it, but that doesn't bother me. And in some regards, I think the shorter backs, as long as they have kind of the bulk or muscle mass to go with it, with their overall frame, it can sometimes work as an advantage where you're hiding behind those massive offensive linemen in the NFL, right? I mean, you can poke holes at if you're worried about the workload. 374 carries last season. That's kind of a lot, and you do see like occasionally lapses in ball security. You can see the ball get punched out occasionally, and that's certainly going to happen at an increased rate in the NFL. But these are all things that I think we can clean up. So there's not a lot to argue with here. You can argue with this 2024 reception share, but if you go back to 2023, where they did use him more in the offense, 19.9% reception share in that 2023 season. So no concerns there for me either.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the height. To me, that almost plays into his strength. Like we talk about this insane contact balance, the ability to miss tackles. Part of that is because he is a bit shorter, but carries the bulk. His center of gravity is just lower than most defenders. The old football adage, lowest man wins. Well, being shorter does help in that sense. But before we get into some numbers, though, if you want more on the rookies, you can hit the join button down below. You will get our rookie guide, every single fantasy relevant player with a film write-up and all the analytics and rookie model information you could ever dream of. Looking at numbers, I mean, like it's absolutely wild, some of the production he's had. Do you think, you mentioned that kind of down year in 2024 in the receiving, do you think he's going to be a kind of 50-plus target guy in the NFL? Or do you think he's going to be one of these guys that almost needs a third down back to potentially spell him and could potentially cap that fantasy ceiling?
I just think it's going to rely on what they want him to do. If the quarterback and the offense wants him to catch a lot of passes, he's going to do that. If he lands in some place like Oakland, Las Vegas at 6, where there's a bit of a dearth of receiving options outside of Brock Bowers right now, right? You could argue he's going to get a ton of receptions there. Maybe not as many if he lands in Chicago at 10, where a lot of people have him mocked just because they do have quite a bit of talent at the receiver position, and if you want to throw a tight end there too. So I think it's going to kind of depend on basically what I'm going to do. I think he can handle as much as the offense wants him to. So we're going to need to see fit and that kind of thing before we can answer those kinds of questions. But he absolutely has the ability to do it.
Yeah, I think, is he going to be a Christian McCaffrey, maybe Alvin Kamara in his pomp, that sort of 80-plus target guy? Probably not. Yeah. But I think with the volume he's going to see on the ground, particularly in around the red zone, I think he's going to be plenty fantasy relevant without that. And, one thing that I think I'm becoming more and more of a snob on is this ability to run in zone and gap. I think the NFL is becoming so much more homogenous in terms of every team needs to be able to run every single type of run scheme. I think Ashton Jeanty can do that from day one. I've got no doubts there.
Yeah, not at all. I mean, you see him, like you mentioned, he can get low, and he kind of stands up players at the point of contact. Explosive 50+ yard gains in 64% of his games in 2024. Maintained speed through his cuts, and yeah, I just think he's pretty much the entire package, except for those little things. He's almost like when we were talking about Bijan, he's almost a little bit boring to talk about because it's just he's good. Draft him, give an extra first round pick to get it to him. There's a tier break between him and literally everybody else, right? So, yeah, he's. Like I said, he's kind of a boring conversation because there's not a ton of things to say, not a ton of things to argue back and forth. But I haven't talked to anybody. I don't know about Rich, but I haven't talked to anybody that has any other spot for him in dynasty rookie drafts, the number one with the bullet, and that includes superplex leagues.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't remember a year where we've had a non-quarterback that's so nailed on 101. There's no conversations. It is slightly ridiculous. Does probably speak to the quality of the rest of the class, but I think he is a superstar fancy option from the second he gets drafted and the second he sets foot in the NFL.
Yeah, and you mentioned the versatility and gap and zone. That's so important as we talk about a couple of these other players on this that we're going to chat about this evening. We'll see that that's not necessarily the case.